Anyway, on the last part, on part 6, this is part 7. We got up to the part where we were actually working on figuring out how we're going to mount this tail light. This is from Walmart. And it's really, this is the more I think about it, really a nice accessory thing. While I was there, I picked up some weather stripping, not knowing if I'm going to need this between the seat and the part in any place. But the objective of today is to get this part sanded out with 2000 and get some of the buffing or all of the buffing done before the baby actually gets here. So I'm pretty good at getting up real early in the morning on days when I'm doing this kind of work, and this day was no exception. We got everything flat sanded out with 2000, something Larry is getting real good at. He's got some of his Ducati parts already buffed out. They look like mirrors. We have our 3 grades of compound, 3 separate microfibers, and I go through with the rough, that medium with that one, and the super fine. And when the paint is soft like this, if you let it dry one extra day, it doesn't hurt. But once I get these compounds going, and you can do this with a machine, you can do it by hand. I prefer doing a lot of this stuff by hand, although you can use a little orbital buffer. This is pretty flat, but when you do it by hand, it really comes out beautiful. And it has a glow and a reflective quality. There's no way you get that out of the can, and there's no way that comes out without a lot of work. But anyway, now that we got that buffed out, now a nice coat of carnauba wax, because we're going to be using epoxy, and I don't want to scratch this, I don't want to get fingerprints on it, and my hands are always full of paint and dirt and thinner and acetone, so I wanted this to be as clean as possible. The carnauba wax will help me keep it clean. You can see the reflection in this. Now, this is really a hand-buffed, beautifully detailed part right now, and I want to keep it that way. Now, this is just like a mock-up, because I know, see, this is in the final part. I'm going to have to be able to shim this just a very little to get this to line up, and your eye catches it. If it's off even the 16th of an inch, it looks, to me, it looks wrong. Now, I really can't set this in stone yet because I haven't recovered the seat. I still have the old floppy seat that's dry rotted in spots and whatever, but this is just like a mock-up, and I wanted to get some idea of what this was going to look like from a lot of different angles. And I'm real excited about this look because, number one, this is a very comfortable seat. In fact, the year they reviewed this bike, they said this was one of the most comfortable seats in motorcycling. And the total package, the whole bike is very comfortable to ride. And by the way, we have another set of Chuck's Renthal bars on there. Thank you, Chuck. So as I'm doing the mock-up, and the mock-up will go on forever because we'll be out in the garage 1,000 times. These are the criteria. When this seat rotates on its hinges, this corner has to miss this bolt. It also has to tuck in and not touch the blinker. So this gets to be a critical fit. And so I wanted to measure where I have this fit, where it actually is, where the low side, one side's a little low, one side's a little high. It's going to have to be shimmed, of course. Didn't know if this was going to work, but I figured I'd give it a try. And it's cheap enough to do this that if this doesn't work, I'll just peel it off, and it'll probably take half of the paint off with it. But it made like a gasket around it, and I thought, that might be real nice. And if it isn't, I haven't decided yet, of course. I knew this part would have to come off because it's too tight of a fit. It'll get squeezed in there. Now, I have this bracketing material, and it's mild steel, and I had thought of a lot of ways to mount this, but I needed to be able to pivot this so that in the final thing, I could line up that stripe. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying, why didn't he just put the brackets on first and then paint the stripe? Yeah, that's another way to do it, but I was doing this and I didn't know what the fender was going to look like. I didn't know what the tail light was going to look like. I didn't know that halfway through this project I was just going to say, I don't like the way it looks and abandon ship. So I didn't want to get the horse ahead of the cart. So I made these brackets up, and they'll be plenty strong for what I'm going to use them for, because the weight is going to be held in the back. There'll be a piece of 1/2 inch hardwood in the back. These are just to get the alignment, and so I can shim it. And I just rough bent these, roughened them up, tack glued them in with some Brodak 5-minute glue, let these dry overnight. Even though 5 minutes you could work on a part, I had other things to do. And see, by bending these, once the seat's in position, I just kind of bent this by hand. Had a big tab left over, which I'll trim off. But now with that screw under there, I can put washers, I can shim it, I could rebend it, I could just pull it off the side and make a whole new bracket. It'll give me a lot of choices until I'm happy and I have the seat recovered, and I've gone through that whole motion. Now see, when the seat's recovered, you're not going to see these wrinkles and lines, and well, let's hope you're not anyway. See, I was real unhappy the way this looked. With this, the stock cover was really in rough shape. And this is a seat I got from Ray for free, and it was in pretty rough shape, but we did use it for a season. Now this is going to be the mount that does all the work. It's going to do two things. It's going to hold the taillight on, and it's going to support the back of the seat, where if somebody goes to push the bike or whatever, we hope they don't. But by having that glued in there with 5-minute epoxy, that'll hold it, and it'll add a reinforcement. It'll give me a place to shim. It'll give me a place that I can get several really good mounting points. And that's why something like this that looks real easy, well, you know, sometimes it is easy, but it's always that when you have two stripes that have to line up, it gets complicated. Now, if we just had these parts painted yellow or black or something, this job would already have been done. So I made sure I had plenty of shim washers when I started doing this, and I wanted to look at it from 3 or 4 or 5 different angles to make sure every one of these angles I had the alignment that I was looking for. And even with that little twisty piece in there, I wanted to reinforce that with some either fiberglass cloth or some epoxy. I wanted that to be a lot stronger than it normally would be, because who knows, in time this is going to take a lot of vibration, or who the hell knows, somebody's going to sit on it or something. But now by fiberglassing that in, that should stack the deck that if anything it's going to break the metal and I'll have to glue another piece in there. But reinforcing everything with fiberglass cloth, I reinforced that this hardwood bracket is going to do the bulk of the work. That's going to attach this part to the seat in a nice big footprint. Just that part alone. Figuring out how I wanted to do this was really took a lot longer than I thought it would. Now, when I made the carbon fiber taillight holder, this is the trick, is I had to get the angle of, this is 2 pieces of glass, I have to get the angle of the glass to match the angle of this seat, or be very close, because the carbon fiber, once this is dry, I can heat it and bend it some, but it's better if I don't have to bend it. So I wrap the table, wrap the glass with ordinary cling wrap, pull out the wrinkles, make sure I have plenty of fiberglass cloth, plenty of carbon fiber, cut everything up ahead of time, mix up the West Systems resin. We've already done this many times in slow motion and whatever. I got 8 layers of fiberglass cloth, 2 layers of carbon, which should make for a nice piece that I can trim out. I want it to be the license plate mount, the taillight mount, all in one piece. If possible, I'd like it to have the look of carbon fiber piece. Now the next step on this is going to be to recover the seat. The seat is in pretty rough shape. And when a seat is 40 years old, the vinyl gets brittle. It's got cracks in it. Yamaha, of course, they always have these little razor blades, the little tabs that hold the cover on. As soon as you go to take them off, the seat just, like a cigarette ash, it self-destructs. The foam under there had to be recut. I was going to re-radius all this up. This turned out to be a lot of work, and I wanted to reshape the foam using my little sander and some hand tools and some 60 grit paper. Tried to get a shape that I thought was a little bit better than what the stock one was. Now Larry donated two yards of vinyl to our cause here. Luckily he was on his way to my house when he picked up the vinyl for me, and I realized I didn't have enough to do this job. Cutting up the vinyl, running all the little razor blades through it, and we did a couple of these on the R1 with staples, but these little razor blades are, boy, if you get one under the fingernail, you will never forget it. So once this little thing starts to come to shape, then the trick is to heat the vinyl. Just heat it and keep pulling it and pull out all the wrinkles that you can. Trim off the excess, and from this point on it just gets pretty redundant. We've done this before many times, so this kind of just takes on a life of its own. Eventually I like this shape a lot better certainly than the stock one. I'm sure it'll be comfortable because what I did to make sure is I rode this bike for a season with this seat. This is a stock seat that's been lowered an inch. Now, when I'm real happy all the wrinkles are out, I can tap the tabs down, get some Brodax CA around the edges, and that seat, that will be, I think, the next time we get to work on this, because tomorrow will be a babysitting day, so I'll try to get some of these videos out to YouTube. But we'll get to put the brackets together, get this all put together, and do the final shimming on the part, and make up the taillight assembly and the license plate bracket from the carbon fiber that we laid up today. And this is the end of, actually, the end of part 7, I think. Yeah, boy, this seat has consumed a lot of hours.